All right. So my name is Grant Bickell. I'm the Director of Student Life and a teacher at Classical School of Wichita in Wichita, Kansas, oddly enough. I have been in this role for 1 year, so expert level. But I have served in our house system for the last 3 years and have really enjoyed seeing how that's changed. And to give you a little concept of where we started, our house system actually started as a student government system. I think this is a pretty common thing. We have kids here, we need student government. So we had a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and a representative. And we walked those first several years in a standard student council model. It's working for public school, it's working for other big Christian schools, let's do it too. I think it made it fairly easy to do. At some point, I don't know if it's after our school's founder read Harry Potter or if he went to enough ACCS seminars on house system, he decided to change it to a house system. So the best thing to do when you do that is just to take student government and multiply it times 4. So we had 4 houses, each with a president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, and representative. Makes it difficult to fill when there's not 20 kids in the upper school. Those 6th graders, they probably did well that first couple of years. And now we have a house system that at least is starting to become more common vernacular in the life of our school. We have about 130 kids from 7th through 12th grade, all split out into 5 different houses. And most of the time it goes okay. There's times where it works really well, there's times when it doesn't work really well, and trying to be constantly evaluating what we do. About a year ago, I said, honey, I was talking to my wife, that would have been weird if it was someone else. Honey, I need to do some research on house system education. And just at that time, not Netflix, Amazon Prime Video had put out a Harrow School of Boys house system documentary. I was like, yes, you should look it up. It's actually pretty good. They allow their seniors to have 2 beers a week with the headmaster. No, we shouldn't add that. Okay. We shouldn't add that. It's kind of a weird thing. They all pick the Foster's giant ones. Anyway. Started to watch. Yeah, we'll call it Dr. Pepper, yeah. The original Coca-Cola recipe. We'll all be good. Okay. As I watched, I was like, man, this house system is not just something that happens on Thursdays for them. It's not just something that happens on Thursdays at the end of the day that most of the seniors skip. It's just something that happens on Thursdays that everyone tries to find a reason to have to meet with a teacher or take their makeup test during the time. It is something that affects the everyday life of their school. Everything down to minor uniform infractions were dealt with through the house system. I began to think about, man, that would be amazing. How do we begin to transition from this thing that our kids are resisting? At the time, everyone was named after Greek letters. We had Sigma Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Mu, Alpha Alpha Delta, and the other one. No one knew what it meant. There was nothing to it. So after many meetings and much pushing, we decided to not only change the names of our houses, but to add a 5th house, so that we could keep our numbers smaller. So we went with Elks, Edwards, Luther, Calvin, Knox, and I threw my little Baptist jab in there with Spurgeon. Okay, I had a little Baptist movement in there. Why was this so important for us? Well, part of it was we had a really good group of students who were saying, please take these things away. we don't want house, or we don't want them how it's currently happening. So we need to transition to something. By giving them a namesake who we could look at and say, this person is a virtuous person who is worthy to follow, and here's why you should follow them. Go figure it out yourself. A good move for us. The other thing that we do that I'm finding is more unique to Classical School of Wichita than maybe other schools is that our students plan all of their own events. So So we have no house parent organization, we have no PTF, nothing of that nature in the upper school. It is all planned by the 7th through 12th grade students. Sometimes that goes fantastic and everything works. Our 7th and 8th grade etiquette dinner and dance this year went off without a problem. Our winter formal that we were supposed to have still hasn't happened yet, and it's never happening. Their day came and went that they were supposed to plan it for, and that is part of the entrusting these juniors and seniors in leadership. Part of the thing you have to accept is there's going to be times when that date comes and goes and you're not having the event you thought you were having. You're not having the great thing that you had in mind. And for us, we've realized student input is of great import. If we want them to buy into it, it can't be what Mr. Bickell says you should do. It can't be all of the things that I think are great ideas and that I found online. It's getting these kids the involvement that they need and helping them in an appropriate way to understand what that should look like. I really have 6 categories for us to discuss today. Ooh, that sounds like a lot as I came up with it. But the first is structure, so how your house system works in a governmental style, how your leadership style is, how often you meet, the purpose for your house system, the identities of your house system, your points and reward system, what do you do, parent involvement, and then student life. If you read the little bio on this one, I did want it to be a round table, but I didn't want to also have to move all of the chairs and tables. So I hope to have the rest of the session be much more interactive and a lot of crosstalk between you all and with me involved, hoping to get some of these things worked out. So I will start with structure and then we can go from there. The structure of ours is each one of our 5 houses has one staff member who is specifically involved and is responsible for training, helping the student leaders, and we call that a house dean. The house deans meet with me either, well, hopefully face-to-face, but that doesn't always happen. But we at least at some point talk through the agenda for the week, what's supposed to be happening, and I set that agenda on Monday and then try to get it either into their box and talk to them about it or have a face-to-face with them on Monday so that Tuesday or Wednesday they can in turn meet with their student leaders. We still actually this year are functioning with 5 leaders. So a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and representative who none of those titles actually say what they really do. Right? The president essentially runs everything. The vice president is kind of like the vice president of the United States. You're never really sure what they're doing, but you know they're doing something. Secretary keeps points, and the treasurer keep our points, and then our fundraising, anything that comes in for that. And then the representative is actually supposed to go represent their house in other houses to hear what is coming up. As you know, as one house plans an event, the representatives are supposed to go to that planning meeting and hear what's happening and then come back and give a report. Truthfully, it's overstructured. We need less people doing more things, which I think in turn will give us more people doing more things, in the sense that we're going to go to a 2-level leadership structure this next year. We're not entirely sure what we're going to call it yet. Maybe consuls and regents or something. But essentially co-presidents and then some secretaries. That's we would describe what their functions are going to be. But we have suffered and won because of a particular person or group of people in a house. And so we've seen, okay, maybe if it didn't all fall on one person's shoulders as the president, it would be a good thing. What if we separated that out into 2 jobs, and then we could be more complementarian in nature. We have a lot of young men who don't want to lead, and we have a lot of young women who do want to lead. How do we honor what we believe is biblically true of them having equal standing but different roles. How do we give them that responsibility? And then the same time saying sometimes you just have to put 4 girls in leadership to get the things done, right? And walking through that. Then the second category, the regents, are kind of the chief servants of the house. So if something needs done, not to say that they're a gopher, but they're a gopher. Go do this, go do that. Directly doing the things that the consuls will send down. The hope for this is, though, that in the 5-student system that is currently leading it, we can get everything done that needs done, from any event they need to run, any time that they're supposed to lead. And by eliminating one of the positions this year, and maybe more in the future, it'll put more responsibility on the rest of the house to take some of those things up and do them. What leadership structures do you guys have in your house systems? What does leadership look like? What's your staff involvement? Anyone want to jump in first? Somebody pointed at you. Tracy from Grace Classical.
We have house system. We've had it for.
This is school year number 2.
Is this number 2?
Great.
Okay, year 2. There's 4 houses. How many do you have in each house?
We have about 26 to 28.
About 20.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's 4.
We found that like 30 number was, over 30 was really unbearable, especially with so many bigger classes at a lower age. You know, you're adding 10 7th graders into a class, and it was like, well, y'all aren't going to get much done. But go ahead.
Okay. We do have co-heads, and that's about our only leadership role.
Sure.
And we do try to make it student-led. So if they have an idea or they want to do something, they need to do it. We don't harp them to do it, because then we just have more work and they're not learning anything. So,
Any staff involvement from
yes, there's a staff member that's ahead of each house that oversees it, and then we named ours after people that they could admire. Elliott, we have an Elliott house, a Newton house, a Ten Boom house, and a Mueller house. Those are our houses.
Good.
Also staff within each house.
Sure.
Under, like, what do you call it, co-teachers or?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are co-teachers, although,
All the staff, all the high school and junior high staff are assigned a house, but it's kind of like I run the Ten Boom house, and so I'm part of all that stuff, but then the other staff, they go to what they can.
yes.
Sure.
Yeah, they're invited to come if they'd like.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. We've been fighting that same. Do we want to put an extra requirement on the staff to be at everything?
And we don't. We
Right.
just figure if they want to,
Right.
then they'll be there.
Right.
Mostly to watch the intramural events. Now
Right.
we have.
Right.
So it's exciting. We have
That's good.
2.
2 of them?
Yeah.
That's good.
One in the fall and one in the spring.
That's
We
good.
had a ultimate frisbee tournament, and now we're gonna have a soccer tournament.
Very
That's
cool.
very exciting, because it's the only type of organized sport that we have. So it's a big deal.
That's awesome. And you're involved with that?
But he does,
Okay.
he runs that, so it's great.
That's great. Very cool. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you meet on Mondays. Are you talking about the?
I meet with the house dean on Monday, and then they're in turn supposed to meet sometime before our Thursday afternoon house time with their cabinet, so their president, vice president, all of
Which
that.
means you have a block on Thursdays at the end of the day that all students go to a house.
Sure, we actually changed it from the end of the day to right after lunch, because we found there were a couple times of the year where we wanted to have house lunches and the 35-minute period wasn't quite enough. So we intentionally put that in the middle, and then we also in that moment we said less seniors will skip.
Yeah.
If they already have to be here, they're going to be here more often. And tied to that is our convocation time. So we do all school convocations on Tuesday and Thursday, and then right before that is our house time.
So what is that, I guess, the main things that we've dealt with is, and you kind of referenced this, we've dealt with apathy with ours, and so I would be interested to hear how you guys have walked through that. We have some kids who will do, hey, we want to do this, and we'll try to help you build it, and we've said to our kids, listen, we're trying to build something that's going to be here past when you graduate, and we've got our elementary kids who get excited about, wearing the whatever shirt it is or whatever it might be, but you got juniors and seniors who roll their eyes anytime you say, hey, we're gonna have a meeting. So how you maybe walked through some apathy, and then what that structure, I guess what your student planning events, like what that has looked like. And our house lunches are once a month, and really our only main events are these intramurals.
Sure.
But it's been kids say, we'll show up if you plan this for us, but
Yeah, right.
we've asked kids to do something. And
Do you guys do a K to 12 house? Or what's your school?
It starts in 7th grade.
Okay, so it's 7 to 12.
Yeah.
Yeah. But always more interested at the lower end.
Yeah, the lower end is.
Yeah.
They get to come
Yeah.
to stuff and
Each house
have
has
social
their
systems.
T-shirts, the Bueller house, whatever, different colors and designs, and so siblings, the upper grades, the younger elementary wear the same color.
Oh,
They
fun.
Siblings, so it's
Because
a
they know that when they
Oh,
get
that's
seventh
fun.
grade,
They're going to be in that house. Yeah, that's great.
So
Yeah.
they all want to be part of it.
Yeah, we have no problems with student apathy. I mean, everyone is 100% involved and they all love it.
Great.
So I can't.
That's a lie.
Oh, yeah, I'm totally joking. Oh, my gosh. The one, yeah, that would be astounding. The one big change we made to combat that specifically is our seniors have to give a thesis defense in April, and then they do their finals at the end of April and beginning of May. So instead of making them be in house leadership all the way to the end of that year, we said, what if we transitioned in March? We know they all check out already, and then we give those new house leaders from March to the following March to lead. And the first thing they have to do is plan the house or the grammar school field day. So the grammar school field day is completely under the wings of the house system now. And we give them, here's
Those
10
parameters and
sports you
guidelines.
can pick from. Pick 5, right? But they run it very successfully that first weekend in May. And apathy, I think, is one of those things that we're constantly putting things in front of kids and telling them, this is good for you, and here's the truth of it, and here's why it can be beautiful, right? Those are 3 of our favorite words. And I think house is one of the things that's easiest for them to ignore. They're not getting a grade for house, so their reading of their Orwell tonight is much more pressing than planning tomorrow's house meeting. So we have a system as well to take leaders out of house roles, and if they're not doing academically well, if they're not leading well, and we did that 2 years ago. I haven't had to do that this year, where if that apathy grows to that level. Our house leaders is where we really think it starts, though, is if you're excited about it, the kids are going to get excited about it, and trying to fight it that way. Mr. Busey's probably my best example of this. Edward's house, since we've brought our house cup, they're leading by over 4,000 points this year. They won last year, and he has done an exceptional job of building a culture, at least in Edward's house,
What happens with the
of
rest
love.
of the houses? You just said what our problem is. If
Sure.
a house is always, just because of the nature of
Sure.
the students in the house.
Sure. So we try to combat that a little bit with what kids we put in and what families we put in,
But
and then we will move families. Yeah, I know it's
are you kidding?
it's groundbreaking.
That
Yes,
is very groundbreaking.
yes,
How do you justify moving families?
The sorting hat would disagree.
yeah. I know this.
Do you move families?
Right. Yes. So this is where Harry Potter is not gospel. Sometimes we have to remember that. Moving of families, so it can come from a family if they say, and it can even be, I want this sibling over here and I don't want their siblings together. We've had that last year, where the 7th grade boy doesn't like that his 10th grade sister is leading his house and he wants out from under her. That's very, very seldom. But we would move a family. We're probably going to do it again this year to put a kid in leadership. Let's say we just have
Too many people.
6 kids in a house that are exceptional leaders, and this house over here doesn't have any. Well, it's time to move some kids out. And it hasn't been hard to be to be honest. There's the passion behind the identity in Edwards House or the identity in Calvin House hasn't run deep for them, for most of them. So it's been a pretty easy transition of, hey, would you consider hopping over here? Sure, if that means I get to be in leadership. What were you going to say?
Well, I would just add that at Classical, at least when I've seen, I've only been there, this is going on my 3rd year, but their identity runs deeper within their grades.
Oh, yeah.
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 And so
Yeah.
for them to switch, there's always going to be somebody in their grade in the other
Yep.
house. And so they've never had a huge issue necessarily changing and jumping around because we haven't established as Edwards Luke the things for very long. So it doesn't like be their core.
Right.
Even my kid who's a 3rd grade, I'm like, you're going to be Edwards. He's like, no, I don't want to do it. We don't have that anticipation of here's what's to come. For them, it's more about their grades, and so we're trying to break that a little bit and say, hey, there are other kids outside of your grade
Right.
that you need relationships with, you need to build with, and it's a slow grow, but that's the intention. So.
Are any of you from the academy in Oklahoma City? No, I don't think so. They have a really cool structure. So they're a 3-school school. They have 2 K-8s that feed 1 9 to 12. And every school has its own house system, but then they all have a sister house. So this is one of the things we've considered for the grammar school. Could we do something once a month where we let all the kids go and they go to their house and it's a sister house to the upper school house? And it gives them a good way to, I think their 9 to 12 were men, and then their K-8 were women houses, and focusing on the different virtues and things of those people, but some sort of something like that would help us, in a sense, build some of that, looking forward to going there. But in 7th grade, we do a sorting, and that's the first time that they, for a lot of them, that they're like, oh yeah, house, that is a thing. They've seen it, they've heard the kids chanting and cheering and seen the different shirts, and but I would say there's definitely a misunderstanding of how it runs.
I was just gonna say, we actually purpose not to have siblings together in the same
Oh.
house. More because of the dormitory, it was dormitory where they were already.
Right.
living. And since we didn't have that, so I don't know, it's a kind of experiment. But my question also is, so in your house time, is the content, like what
Yeah,
happens?
yes, that was my next.
Oh, good.
Thank you for transitioning us so well. Thank you so much. So we do one house meeting every Thursday for 20 minutes, and this is down from 45 minutes every Thursday, and it was just too much. It was too much time. So Mr. Beach and I were talking, we roomed together last night, so we were throwing all these ideas off each other, but we really want to have a time each month where there's some sort of mentoring time, some sort of actual meeting time to get the things done that need done, some sort of competition, and then service. And those are the 4 things that house kind of runs at. So mentor, meet, compete, and serve. It would be beautiful if those things worked out and we could just do every first week with mentoring. You know, what happens when the 3rd and 4th week are our fall fest and they eat up all of the time of that, right? One of the ideas is to flatten leadership structure even more, and just to say, what if we had a time where all the deans and house leaders and I got together, and then the house leaders got to say, man, we really don't like skate night. Can we do this? Sure, run with it. Run it really well. So in that meeting time, we have tried Robert's Rules of Order. We've tried a much more fluid leadership style, but somewhere in the middle is truthfully what has happened with there's some sort of call to, hey, the meeting's starting. And there's a basic agenda for the day with 2 or 3 points to get through. Our goal is not to have those 2 for next year, not to have those 2 leaders do everything. So to assign someone else, hey, you're going to read the devotional this week. How are you going to, what are you going to do to prepare for that? But that 20-minute time is very valuable. 1st, 2nd, and 4th quarter. 3rd quarter is a wasteland of, what are we doing again this week? There's no events coming up. We did all our events last semester. And so that's when we add in specific house-based competitions every month, and one house is responsible for it each month. And so we do a physical competition, an academic competition, and then a choose your own. So 2 months ago, we had a dodgeball tournament, and everyone got all sweaty in the 40 minutes. And then the next month, we did charades, and it was silent, just lines of kids, and whoever made it through the bucket first and with the least amount of skips won.
It's during the school day?
Yeah, yep, we do that during that house time. So,
20
yeah.
the whole school?
So,
I mean,
I
7
assume
to 12.
your competitions, you expand the time.
So, no, on a competition day, we just won't meet.
Okay.
So we use the front part of that at the end of lunch for announcements, and then we go right into house time. So on a competition day, we'll just be like, all right, and Edwards is facing Luther first, get on the court, you're playing dodgeball, and then we time it. So, I mean, it was very quick dodgeball games of, we have to get through 7 games in the next 25 minutes. You have 3-minute games, and go. But, yeah.
Sure, we do a similar thing. We do 4 competitions over the course of the year. I'm kind of getting them at Providence. We've been in the house system for the last 4 or 5 years. And one of the things, this is sort of developed organically, but we do similarly, we have an academic challenge. We do academic quiz bowl that takes up an afternoon, one quarter. We do a Frisbee tournament, which we actually do at the beginning of the year at our upper school retreat.
Oh, nice.
So they've just gotten assigned their houses, and then they go at a tournament. And then our third challenge is a build. It's an engineering challenge, and so that's similar. They're constructing, coming up with ideas, developing plans, and then there's a day set aside for what we call our literature festival. And the build always has something to do with the literature festival theme. And then similar to you guys, at the end we do what we call the quad house competition, and each of the houses has to develop a challenge that all houses participate in. It's only 15. Each one is only 15 minutes, and each house, of course, develops it to cater to their house's strengths. If they're particularly athletic, they're going to come up with a challenge. But it has some rules. Everyone's got to be able to participate, and it can't be like fair in some way. And so that forms the spine of ours. Is that sort of series of competitions, and we've wrestled a lot with do you supplement that with lots of little things, or do you get fatigue of like everything is worth points all the time and I just want a break from that?
Yes.
And so we've shifted. We probably like 2 or 3 years ago, everything was worth points all the time, and it eventually sort of wore on students.
Yeah.
And so we've shifted back towards those core 4, and then a couple we give small amounts of points for a couple of days throughout the year. Attendance in the mornings to encourage students to show up on time at the very beginning, because we do our house time first thing in the morning as a check-in. They meet with their house for 10 minutes. That's where they do it. Attendance, lunch order, that sort of thing. So we have this built-in time at the beginning. That's
School day.
yeah. It was previously, but it was always you go to your homeroom to do attendance and lunch orders.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we built in the house system, that was the natural
Yeah.
time. So all day by house. And, 2 days a week. So 3 days a week. We end up with all schools for competition, so it's a real short time. 2 days a week, it's more like 20 minutes, and it has a bit more of the either devotional element or check-in, see how they're doing. And then we do a house lunch on Wednesdays. So lots of, no really elongated times, but lots of little touch points throughout the week.
Every Wednesday, all houses at the same time meet for lunch.
That's right. Yeah, just in there. And that's oftentimes, like, if there's a competition coming up, that's when they'll do their
Science.
planning or, that sort of thing.
Do you do siblings in yours?
We have traditionally, we've moved away from it some lately just because the numbers aren't working
Yeah.
well. We're small enough that, and we've run into the problem of a dominant house that has, or you end up with grade imbalance. We've run into that problem too. So those are the difficulties that I think is, the bigger you get, maybe there's more cushion there, but we're small enough that you run into those all the time. So I've done the thing where I've talked to individual students and I've asked them, hey, will you move from this house to this house in order to help them, because they need an upper school leader, and your house is stacked with them, and you know that. And it's a hard thing, and I've had students say no to me on that, and I've let them stay in the house that they're in. But I've had other students that are willing to take on the challenge and whatnot. But that is a real difficulty for sure.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. The GCA is looking to go to a 4-day school. I don't know, do you have know of any 4-day schools that have a house system that
Sure.
it runs?
Yeah, you guys would benefit a lot from the Academy in Oklahoma City because they do one campus of their K-8 is they call it blended. So they do 3 days a week of on campus and 2 days a week of homeschool. Or maybe I think some weeks they do 2 days a week of homeschool and 3 days a week, or 2 days a week on campus and 3 days a week of homeschool. So in your house, they only have one time a year where everyone from that house at that campus gets all together. So they have the traditional student who's there every day. But if you're on the B schedule for your blended model, they're only there 3 times a week. And what they do, they use their morning matins times once a month on Thursday. So they do a morning prayer and convocation time with the house or as a whole school. And then one time a month they get together and say, okay, it's our B-day house time, and they have an agenda for the day. And it actually was, when I observed it, it was mostly devotional driven. And then they, with kindergartners through 8th graders in a house, for them, it was, hey, let's do this activity. And if you turn in this coloring sheet by tomorrow afternoon, you get 5 house points for us. And who has their Bible? Hey, you all brought your Bible. It's 2 points per Bible. So I think there's ways to do it. The intentionality of it has to increase for that time. If you're going to take a whole day out, it has to be something that is very worthwhile. And then they eat lunch every day as a house on all campuses. So the K-8 eats house lunch, and they just have their banner, and they go over, and whatever 5 tables they get to first, that's where they sit. And then whoever is leading points for the week gets to sit in the middle at the place of honor. So that's kind of a fun little thing for them. I'm going to turn on this and say I have a question for you all. One of the things that we started this year was to be in house leadership, you had to write an essay on your house namesake and what you would change. And boy, were they raw. I mean, they did not hold back, a lot of them, on their essays. And I so appreciate that. I didn't want them to hold back. But this is the first year we've ever done it. What's your leadership? Usually what it was the 3 people who were involved sitting around and saying, yeah, that kid's a good leader, this kid's a good leader, okay, he should probably be president. And then we had a little student vote on, who do you think should be, and it sometimes produced great people and sometimes didn't produce anyone. So how are your leaders appointed? And then secondarily, what kind of training do you do for them? Who is... I heard you say you do a back-to-school retreat. We do an orientation similar to that. But I would like to add a day before with just the house leaders. Is anyone doing anything like that? And I saw your hand go up.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Was one of the things that they talked about, why do we have a house system inviting people and not letting everybody? I mean, that's been our...
Not that I have come across. I probably shouldn't admit this, especially not on camera. I'm our middle school basketball coach for boys, and I tell the boys often Jesus won, so we should too. And I love, yeah, you can take that. I don't even need credit. I love competition. We did a staff competition last year called the Brass Apple Game, and we hid an apple in the school. And you would have thought there was $1 million prize on the line.
Awesome.
The way people were. So there's some of it that our teacher culture, we are competitive. We want to win. I mean, that's not everyone. But so we have some natural inclination towards that, where we have a full varsity sporting program that goes all the way down to 5th and 6th grade, organized by the school. that we really like competition. We just did a Giving the Basics drive where we had them bring in needs for other students at local schools, and I literally had parents and grandparents calling me to tell me how unfair my grading system was and how kindergarten shouldn't have won because they got an easier thing with toothbrushes than laundry stuff. And I was like, yeah, but the point is we're getting kids. So no, it wasn't on that. It honestly, a lot of the feedback was, we want more student leadership, we want a bigger say, and we don't want to be told what events we're going to do. We want input into that. So it is written, so it shall be done, right? Like, sure, let's try it. And I think that has been one characteristic of our house system that has been a good thing, is we're willing to try new things every year, and not just say, well, we're doing it because we do it. Appeal to tradition. Also, tomorrow I'm teaching on logic, if you need to hear more about logic.
All the different houses, your leadership training, is that all done together with all the?
So we actually have never done one. So our goal would be to have something for them this fall. The leadership training has literally been nothing. You assume leadership. Hopefully we picked well.
One of the things that we started to do the last 2 years, because we had the same problem. Originally it was just democratic election.
Yeah.
And
Right.
you end up with leaders that you end up having to remove because they're
Yep.
doing it, or they weren't really interested in doing it. Someone else.
Right.
So we shifted how do we get our leaders to application, address and nominate them, and then if there are more than 2 that have been nominated, then it goes to a vote.
Oh, that's cool.
Because we just have 2 house captains per house. And then what they do is I meet with them every Monday during lunch. So they're giving up another lunch, but we meet every Monday during lunch, and that's sort of an opportunity for us to work through logistic stuff, so planning competitions, that sort of thing. But there's always the sort of lulls and busyness of that, and so in the lulls we do a little bit more leadership development stuff, and that some of that's abstract. Like this year we worked through Andy Crouch's book Strong and Weak, which is about vulnerability, empowering leadership. I think last year we did Henry Nouwen's In the Name of Jesus, which is another leadership book. So kind of trying to build some structure. And I don't know how excited my students are about that part of it. I think I try to pick books that they don't have to read outside.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise,
Right.
they're like plenty of homework otherwise.
Right.
With that sense of, is there something I can give you that's going to help you go back and lead? And sometimes it's that is more practical. Sometimes it's more abstract or theoretical.
I know one of the things that we had said for us this year, kind of in that same vein, is every time we meet about house, we want to start in prayer. So that actually, the person, I don't know, I assume it was hardest for me, but it was really hard for me to not just get to the nuts and bolts of the meeting. To be like, oh yeah, I don't know how many times we'd be 5 minutes into a meeting and be like, we didn't pray. We need to go back and reorder this. Anyone else have something to that?
The leaders, they want to lead. Because ours kind of worked out where they kind of want to do it, right? But there's not so many that want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they want them to do something so that they could actually, outside of writing it on their college applications, I'm a leader of this house. What do you do?
Right. Yeah.
What are you leading?
Right.
What are you leading? And
I think job descriptions are super helpful for that. That's one of the things I'll be working on is every job that you're going to have for the rest of your life, you're going to get told, here's the tasks you will do, here's the things we expect you to do, and other duties as assigned. Right? And that's...
then they can know what they're...
And don't pay attention to that last line.
Right.
Sign off.
Right. But I think that would be great for us to have to move towards for them having an understanding of this is what I'm actually signing up for. One of the other things we do fight is parent involvement. So I hear often from parents, why don't you just let us plan this thing? Why don't, it's like, no, thank you. Thanks for your input. But no, thank you. But I know of several schools who run their PTF or whatever you call your parent-teacher fellowship or through their house system. So that's really intriguing to me. But I think they'll be prone to overstep student leaders in that, where, yeah, mom or dad, I know you can plan a wedding-like formal. It's not actually the point of this. Most of the formal is seeing them try to figure out how to call a caterer and how to.
I think our